Welcome to the Driller Newscast. I'm your host, Brock Yordy, and I'm coming off an incredible week at the PDAC conference in Toronto, where the global buzz around sustainability and decarbonization for the Prospectors and Developer Association of Canada, it was all eyes are on how do we get the minerals we need to meet our decarbonization goals. McKinsey said we need $5 trillion invested by 2035. We met with amazing individuals, including Dr. Elliott from Sequent, to talk about AI and downhole diagnostics and bringing what we've learned in the field together with what we have in historical data in the future. We met with Rachel Bourne of KB Drilling Fluids and had a great discussion about her journey in the industry. We met with Fleming College students and Professor Jim Smith, one of the lead professors at Fleming College in drilling. But today I am so excited to jump right into a discussion with founding NY-GEO organization member John Ciovacco. And that's right. Episode 158 is brought to you by the NY-GEO organization and the Brooklyn 2026 conference, which is March 23rd, 24th, and 25th. And what we're going to cover today is all the importance that goes into this conference and how it has evolved over the years and how the panel talks, the discussions, the keynote speakers, and the all-around promotion of our industry helps drive our movement of wide-scale acceptance. We're beyond adoption. We're into execution. And that leads us into all eyes on the Empire State. I'm so excited to get into this discussion with John, who also is owner of Aztec Geothermal and is so busy within this industry on so many levels of working with new professionals coming in to insight, to just taking time to share knowledge with us so that we as drillers, as industry professionals, as designers, as engineers can be the best professionals possible. Let's jump into this. I promise you this discussion is going to be great. And if you haven't considered, you need to go to the NY-GEO organization webpage, register. You do not want to miss this conference. For this week's feature, we have a great industry knowledge share expert, an individual that I call a friend and has shared a ton of great insight into the engineering side and the design side and some drilling, everybody, of geothermal, geo-exchange holes, setting loops, looking at buildings and areas differently. And I am so excited to have John Ciovacco with the NY-GEO organization and Aztec Geothermal with us. And like we've been talking about in the news this week, we are in full go mode. We are past theory and we are on to execution and application. John, how are you doing?
Just great, Brock. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing great, and I thank you. I see you all over the place. We pop in other meetings and stuff, and I know you're a very busy man. And we always got to take a breath and talk NY-GEO convention, which is in Brooklyn in just 3 weeks' time, depending on when you catch this podcast or the video. But what are you excited about with NY-GEO? I'm seeing some great keynotes. What are you excited about?
Yeah, we've got terrific keynotes this time. We've got Rory Christian, who's the chair of the Public Service Commission. And so those are the head regulators, and he's the head of the head regulators, and he's been with us before, but he's getting more focused on geothermal and the power that might come from third-party ownership because of some of the changes in legislation he's talked to me about. So that'll be exciting to see if he has some mention of that. And he definitely has us in his vision. That's why he keeps showing up. The other one that's coming in is Rich Dewey from the New York Independent System Operator, or NY-SO, as they're often called. And the NY-SO is the organization that organizes all the electricity in the state They purchase electricity from cross borders, from Canada. They move electricity around within. So they're kind of like, it's kind of like being uh, both a aircraft, what do you call it when you
Controller,
control?
traffic controller.
Yeah, an air traffic controller and the floor of the stock exchange all at the same time. They're buying and selling and moving electricity around the state, and they've been really technology agnostic. They're really reluctant to say for the reliability that they need to keep in the system, they need to make sure that it just happens. They don't care how it happens. And as a result, we've had a little trouble getting their attention because we're a technology that's kind of specific to solve this problem of grid reliability and lowering peak. But the fact that he's coming down from the Capital District where he lives, the Albany area, which is about 3.5 hours out, for an evening event in Brooklyn to speak to us is in of itself an endorsement that he feels our technology really can have an impact on stabilizing the grid, which is what his life is all about. And then we have from Con Edison to begin day two, we have Vicky Koo, who is the senior vice president, and she is the one who's primarily responsible for building electrification initiatives throughout. And geothermal fits in that for them, and they've got a lot of energy and resources that are going towards geothermal projects right now. They've got thermal energy network projects with the U10s, the utility thermal energy network projects. They've got 3 of them that they're bringing forward right now. And then they also have a whole bunch of building electrification initiatives. They're the presenting sponsor for the conference, so they're the big sponsor. And they were when we were in Brooklyn last time too. So we really appreciate their input and looking forward to having Vicky up there and telling us all the good things that they're engaged in our industry.
Every keynote, and I can't stress to everybody listening right now, watching right now, that this is March 23rd, 24th, and 25th. The 23rd is site tours, and then 24th we get right into having these opening discussions and the keynotes, and the same with the 25th. And we've I've always learned something great and walked away empowered, looking at how the state of New York is helping us blaze the way for the rest of the country. And as we flip from keynotes, uh, things are changing in the geothermal landscape. When we look at from last time we were in Brooklyn in October of 2024 till now, from policy making to where AI and data centers are influencing. What about the tracks? They're always awesome. What do you got up your sleeve this year?
Yeah, so maybe I could just swing into the website and show people how to get to the information, and then
Dude,
we'll.
you can go to ny-geo.org and get right to the events and hop right in there and register for the conference if you haven't already. And you can see this schedule, and we have it up. Take us through it, John.
Yeah, and there's if you get on the website, you can go to events and hit the first one on there, which is the Brooklyn event, or you can just pop down a little bit, and then there's information about the event here. So we'll start here, pop down there. This is the homepage for the event, which gives you the chance to go in and register, or to look at the schedule, or to apply for top jobs or the Golden Tricone.
Yeah,
So,
Golden Tricone, the GDA is it's so cool that Christine and NY-GEO got with the Geothermal Drillers Association and said, hey, let's talk about some of these successful projects throughout the East Coast and the country, not only New York. But I'll tell you what, there's some great drilling going on in New York, and very innovative ways to do the least amount of impact possible.
yeah, and there's an application that you can go right from the website to apply for that. And that would be great if we can get more folks engaged in that. The schedule at a glance is kind of the place where you can access the way the days get laid out. And let me go through a little bit of how the day is laid out. As Brock talked about earlier, we have site tours. Those are actually being announced tomorrow as of our talking about this today.
We'll be live March 9th.
Yep. So the 23rd is the site tours. Monday, Tuesday, We get into the keynote address from Rory Christian, which will be terrific to hear from. Then I'm doing commissioning and some retro commissioning. I feel like we need to make sure we design things well, but sometimes we don't give the operations to the building personnel, the operations folks, and they don't really know how to run it. So we're really focusing on making sure we commission. And then retro commissioning is also a piece of this. And that's where we go into an existing building that has a geothermal system and we kind of make sure it's running right again. So we've got 5 sessions that are focused mostly on how do we get started well. And that is highlighted, I think, by Don Penn Don Penn is a guy that's designed and then has had built maybe 250 K through 12 schools. And so he's going to talk about the design process right from the concept all the way through to commissioning. But he's a wealth of knowledge and probably the person that's done and designed and seen built the most large commercial systems, certainly of anybody that I know and probably in our entire industry. And he's also never been to the conference before.
As a driller and civil construction side of the geothermal project lifecycle, what I've always enjoyed about NY-GEO, and you're doing it again with looking at commissioning and the handoff, is like that operational lifecycle. We think so much about a project starting, and we get to completion. It's been flushed and purged, but that is like the baby being birthed. Like there is a whole now 50 years or more of a system when it's done right.
That's right. That's right. And Garen Eubank is giving a nice session in there. That's always fun. Also a wealth of knowledge. Lots of good stuff happening there. Thermal energy networks, kind of the rage of almost like a trend right now. It's not that there's anything terribly new about it conceptually. The real difference is utilities are getting more engaged in it. So these are some basic sessions on how to design and control. We're going to talk about what's happening in North America. We have a nice session on what's happening globally that Zainab Magavi and Eric Bosworth are leading. And they're going to talk about how we can move the scale that's happening in other countries. For instance, in the World Bank is doing things where the minimum size of the thermal energy network is 1,000 connected customers, but it could be as many as 10,000 connected customers. These are orders of magnitude larger than the pilot projects we're seeing in the United States. So that's
Hella with the IFC, she has done amazing things in developing countries and countries that are well on their way of, how do we raise these funds and get it done? That's exciting to see Hella coming.
Yeah. And balanced with somebody from Jacobs, the largest engineering company in the world, except for the other companies that say they're the largest. And I apologize to them in advance. There's hybrid systems. I think some people are a little reluctant to talk about that, but it's not just geothermal. It's all kinds of thermal resources. So that'll be a fun session to talk about. And then this is I don't know, a little controversial, thermal energy networks versus individual building. So should we be doing thermal energy networks or when should we be doing them? And so Ryan Sarda, one of our board members and now joined Midwest Geothermal, is going to lead a session to talk about when it's appropriate to do an individual set of boreholes for a building. And then when might we say, hey, let's do it as a network. And I think that there's lots of folks that have a bias. They have a bias towards a network, or they have a bias towards individual building. And we're hoping that this session has a nice balance to it, and it doesn't come across too controversial one way or the other. But
I think you're right with balance. Like it's got to be the right approach to the right area, the right project. And there's going to be places where the building has the funding and the bandwidth, where a neighborhood or a network is possible elsewhere.
Projects and equipment that houses a few things, some Geothermal 101, the top jobs presentations will be given from the awards. Those are not specifically drilling. Those are more the entire projects where the Golden Tricone is specific to the drilling industry. We've got some good stuff on high temperature heat pumps, which is an important thing. Designing with modular chillers, those will be important topics that we hear from. The dinner is when we have Richard Dewey come, and that's the president of the NY-GEO, the New York ISO. And that's really the highlight of that. But we'll also give out awards during that as well. And that's the dinner is really something that's worth staying for. The next morning, we do have Vicky up from Con Ed, and she'll get us going. Venetia Lannon from the NY-GEO board, actually. We'll give an introduction of her. She's also vice president there, so that'll be a nice start to the day. Keith Hayes, Brightcore Energy, is leading a plenary panel talking about the financing the future of thermal energy, and he's got some great panelists. In particular, we've got the CFO of NYPA, the New York Power Authority, Tim Weber's from Diverso Energy. They've done many third-party owned big commercial projects up in Canada, and he's looking at trying to get more initiatives in the United States. Jay Mervs is from the New York City Energy Efficiency Corp, but they're helping finance projects and have done some good geothermal projects. And Sarah Ross from Undaunted K-12 is really trying to get the K through 12 geothermal market going, electrification of schools, which is so important. The next day, we've got 3 more tracks. We've got thermal exchange, which is a pretty broad scope of things, and that's certainly an important one for the drilling community. We've got applications of wastewater and thermal storage, which NYSERDA is leading. We've got ground heat exchanger science and diagnostics, which one of my employees, Eowyn Kendall, is moderating a panel, and that's a really great one. This panel, during their prep session, they extended the prep session, and they want to have another prep session, and I think that they're like buddies already, and they're already collaborating on how they can exchange information about how to improve the science of understanding ground heat exchanger technology.
Yeah, that's a great group with Connor and Isabel and John and Jose and Eowyn, who is one of my favorite rock stars of our industry that is on drilling job sites all the time. So I think this is great.
And then a couple that you're leading. Maybe you could talk about them. The Urban Driller and the drilling and completing geothermal boreholes for non-drillers.
Yeah, it's very exciting to, again, help bring perspective. And NY-GEO has, between the Empire State Waterwell Association and Kevin Moravic's involvement from being one of the founding members, NY-GEO is a great ally to the drillers and has always found the right space and time as it's talking about regulatory to having major influence on the 500-foot rule and where we're going from there. And so, again, if we're going to scale and continue doing what we're doing, we need to champion the fact that we got to be able to drill in urban centers and having a discussion. And the panelists that have come together, again, a great group with Kim with Rototech and their way of handling solids and applying what they've learned in Scandinavia, to Dan Sergeson of Salis O'Brien. We had him on the newscast, and we found out that he cut his teeth in the industry as being a muddy boot engineer in the field. We got Scott Adelsbach with Rig in the Box. There's so much there, and he's one of the reasons Con Edison is scaling in a way, is he's found ways to get into some of these older brownstones and into the basement or into limited areas. With Soren So, who basically introduced himself to the U.S. geothermal rig market at NY-GEO Brooklyn, not 2 years ago, just October of 2024. And now Coil Rig has rigs in the U.S. and Soren's got a great perspective and a wealth of knowledge. And then, of course, our favorite gangster of the New York drilling, universe, Garrett Carrito, who will always tell it like it is, but will also show you that he is as engineer savvy and drilling savvy as you can get, and has applied his techniques and raising the professionalism of this industry. So we're going to talk urban drilling and what we see today that we didn't 2 years ago. Second one, and I'll be fast, is One, we have Kevin Moravik, who's going to help us go through, drilling and completing geothermal boreholes for non-drillers. So we're going to do 25 minutes or so on, the risk matrix choices and how we complete the hole. And then we have Kevin with, Moravik Geothermal, and then Mike Fleming with Phoenix Foundation out of Boston, and Colt McCarthy out of Austin, Texas with Republic Drill Co. We're going to get into the rigs, the equipment, and how we do it. So I'm really excited about this one because we're going to take a moment and talk about, okay, can I use a rig in a box in a basement? Can I use a coil tubing rig? Can I use big air? Can I use mud? What type of grouter do I need? How do I set these loops? It's going to be a great discussion. And I'm really appreciative that NY-GEO and John has, let the drillers off the leash, but really they've let the drillers run wild for a few years now.
Yeah. And when we go back to Saratoga, we'll do even more drilling. It's always even though the urban driller is such an important topic, it's also tough to do demonstration projects and things and have tours of drilling in a dense urban environment. But we'll get back to that when we get back to Saratoga too.
And as you're at the NY-GEO website, go and look at the photos from Saratoga in 2025, because the coolest thing you're going to see in the field day and the site tours, one, in the site tours, you see the excitement and everybody, having these great conversations. And on the field day, you see a wide group of individuals helping put a loop in the ground and grout and getting muddy. It is really neat to see all the hands on a loop going in the hole at a field day. We don't get enough of that. And thanks again to NY-GEO and Christine with the BOCES group to make that happen. This is what makes NY-GEO such a phenomenal conference that we have to be at.
Yeah, that was just great stuff. And we'll do that again. We'll rent a field and we'll poke some holes in it. We've also got, aside from the thermal exchange, which we just went through on day 2, we've got business models. There's some pretty cool stuff in that one as well. Some of it's a bit of an update. So the federal tax credit stuff is always good to talk through. And there's 4 firms that Zach Fink is going to lead through that specialize. Jacob Goldman is always a hoot. If you haven't seen him speak, that's always a treat. Bridging the financing gap. This is the first time we've seen the green banks, the Connecticut Green Bank and the New York Green Bank will give examples of how they are doing bridge financing of tax credit amounts. So they're basically fronting the money before the tax credit comes in so that these projects have construction financing. And that's a great application. And green banks have finally started to find their footing with our technology, which is nice. Third-party ownership is a new thing that's happening in our industry because of some changes in tax law. Tim Wright, the new CEO of Enertech, is going to be leading that discussion. And there's really 4 very different perspectives on here, including Kareem, who is working with Brock to try to look at large commercial systems, where a lot of these others are looking at, have a little bit more of a small residential angle. But Kareem is really thinking big, and so we're really looking forward to hearing from him.
That's a great panel again with Bob and Holly and Maggie. Like it's hard to choose where you want to be to hear those great discussions that are going to happen as we get into these panels.
The power of GRECs. GRECs are geothermal renewable energy credits. It seems like the areas that the third-party ownership models are really taking off are places that have this, or this is emerging as something that adds some additional incentive, and that additional incentive makes it easier to finance. And so this group, led by Donovan Gordon from our board, Ryan Dougherty, Kelsey from Carbon Solutions. Jason is actually an installer who uses GRECs as a part of his business in Maryland, which is cool. And then Dandelion also has a place in that. So that'll be a good one to hear. And New York is trying to get the GREC to be something in our state as well, so that could enable that strength. This is a bit
And
of a
GREC is geothermal renewable energy credits. I every time I hear this, because the 4-year-old in me comes out, I think of dinosaurs, but GREX is something that's very important as we love our acronyms.
indeed. This building the industry is a little bit of a catch-all. I'm leading a panel on practical decarbonization. Probably will be a little bit controversial to some of our stakeholders, but we've got a vice president from National Fuel. We've got the chief operating officer from NYPA, the New York Power Authority, Rachel Carpatella from Wendell, an engineering company that's doing projects that they think demonstrate that. And VGS, the Vermont Gas System, but now called just VGS, Richard Donnelly, is going to talk about their very unique ways that they're moving from a gas business to more of a broad thermal business that includes geothermal. But this is, you certainly will hear things that some of our stakeholders will bristle at a little bit. Brian will talk about hybrid systems where there's gas and a heat pump, could be a geothermal heat pump, just as part of a transition. But I think that these are important dialogues to have, and then we're hoping to keep it light and get the information out. AI is we just have a kind of a barnstorming panel of folks that'll talk about what platform are they using, what problem are they trying to solve, how are they inputting information into the AI platform, what kind of results do they get, and what's the benefit to their company. And we'll hear from 6 panelists very quickly on how they're using these tools. And we hope to sort of inspire people as to the breadth of this. It's not supposed to be a session that focuses on the negative aspects and the potential errors that can be caused. That'll come up, but it's more what's the potential of those tools for us. Data centers are a big thing. Geothermal has a little bit of a muted impact because the closed loop, which is what a lot of us work on, just it's like drinking from a thermal fire hose. But it's beyond that. And this panel is going to talk about how heat pump technology and geothermal technologies and other, like we've got wastewater from Shark. Michael Albertson will talk about how do we engage this data center dialogue in a way that we counteract those grid and water use impacts that we're hearing so much about. So that should be an exciting one, and led by Dimitri from Celsius, and I think he might just be representing himself by the time he gets there.
But a great asset and industry expert and newly board member of the
Oh,
Geothermal Drillers
good. Look
Association.
at
So
that.
Dimitri is one heck of it. There's several GDA board members that have been elected since this schedule was put together.
Well,
So
maybe we'll give him a GDA title. That sounds good. This is a cool one. This is beyond BTUs. So building the case for KW as a recognized thermal standard. So if you buy heat pumps in Europe, they are rated by KW. So like a 15 kW machine that might in our vernacular be like a 6-ton machine, but the tonnage, the BTU, it's a little bit of an archaic standard. And whenever we on a policy level are trying to describe the benefits of an electrification technology that has this thermal component, large thermal component, we're starting to cross these boundaries in ways that make it difficult to talk about. And so this panel will talk about how do we maybe make the transition, how do we think about it, and how do we make the transition into thinking about thermal in the same units as we think about electricity? How do we level that playing field in a way that makes this dialogue more understandable and brings the policy aspects to light much more quickly and helps enable the shift that we need to see.
I
So
think this talk's very significant, being that as we look at big G geothermal and our little geothermal, being able to get into a kilowatt would help us in multiple ways. And
that's right.
for all the rest of those naysayers out there, this doesn't have anything to affect with fantasy football. So we can recognize kilowatt hours versus yards and feet, folks.
That's right. Furlongs, as Bob Wyman, who's on the panel, has a very, very funny take on all of this because he just thinks it's so archaic that we're using BTUs, and then having just to make that conversion constantly. So let's just set the playing field. Jose Acuna from Sweden, who Rototech is sponsoring to come over, is on that panel. And if you're in Sweden, you live in a KW world. Thermal is KW, electricity is KW, and KW and KWH are used interchangeably between thermal and electric. And that just makes that whole dialogue and the value that our technology brings much, much clearer.
So what I've just seen is, and I've been to the last 5 New York Geos, and I wish I'd been at Geopalooza day 1, but I wasn't as cool as the other 70 individuals that went to the first one, as I've learned about that, and maybe it was more than 70. I may
Not
have
many
just,
more.
but this conference from even last year's or the year before is lots of pieces we need to continue to actively move our industry forward, but a lot of new content and a lot of international experts as we look at what wide scale acceptance looks like. To have a Jose, have a Hella to talk about the global perspective, to get into this. This is a great year for this, and it will progress us through 2026 into 2027, where we're the sky's the limit for us as the people who are going to power us getting us there. I just enjoy what this conference does for us.
Well, great. And I already have a list of additional topics that we'll put up in 2027. A lot more will be happening in terms of workforce development, which I'm excited about. And all those presenters that came to me with topic ideas that I didn't get in, I got a list. We'll get you up on stage. And also there's so much more opportunity for that hands-on experience where we get a little more space up in Saratoga, same venue as we were in a couple of years ago, which I think worked out really well. So
that's great. And the same as this Brooklyn, and everybody, New York-GEO is doing a ton of workforce development behind the scenes right now that is moving us forward. That'll be exciting for 2027. The same as the regulatory and policy making piece. There's just a lot in works that had started in 23 and 24 and 25 that is now in the middle, where it is much harder to have the roundtable discussion we had last year with the regulators talking about what do we do with solids? What do we do when we go beyond 500 feet? So all these great things are happening, and you need to be part of the discussion. So I'm challenging you, get signed up, come join us, come join the Driller booth, have a discussion about the industry, come join these panels, and not to mention the great camaraderie that happens at the dinners and the breakfasts and the after hours. This is fun, and it's in a great location in Brooklyn. It's easy to get there from LaGuardia. It's something you can't miss.
Unbelievable. Thanks, Brock. That was awesome.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John. That was fantastic. And there's so much going on. And I hope you got the pieces that you need, from the voices of the drillers to the voices of the policymakers to new investment, to how artificial intelligence is influencing the way we work and how we are working to harness thermal energy resources and geothermal to lower the impact of data centers. It is really cool, the journey of the New York-GEO organization and all the passionate board members and volunteers and all that goes into workforce development, to working with the BOCES, to advocating for drillers and working alongside the Empire State Water Well Drilling Association. This is going to be my 5th or maybe 6th conference. Every one of them has been different. Every one of them has had an opportunity to focus on drilling and civil construction, along with promoting the rest of the industry, how we all work together. Take time right now. Go to the New York-GEO website, register. The 23rd, we're going on site tours. It's going to be a great time. 24th, we get to work. We get to hear from Rory Christensen and several other great keynote speakers. There's so much going on. You do not want to miss out. It's a great event. Check out thedriller.com for all the latest content in geothermal, water, construction, policymaking. And next week, I'm so very excited. We're going to have Kevin Moravec from Barney Moravec Waterwell and Geothermal, Moravec Waterwell Drilling. We're going to talk about all that goes into being part of this association, the groundwater associations, helping develop the next generation, and why we as drillers, the opportunity is now. Thanks, everybody.